Well, hi there. I hope the lockdown went well for you. For me, it kinda did, even though I got sick for a few days, but I managed to read quite a lot of books and to get out of a pretty big reading slump. So, thanks to the lockdown for that. Thus, I decided to do a video about my lockdown reads, or at least my top 5 lockdown reads. The first book I want to talk about today is Educated by Tara Westover. Basically, this book is an autobiography. This woman is an incredible woman, first of all. This woman tells us her story of getting away from her family to get her education. So Tara Westover has grown up in a Mormon, very conspiracy theory believer family. They were survivalists, they were not believing in modern medicine. The children at some point would stop going to school. Hence, Tara really didn't get much schooling done. So at some point, she realizes that she really has to get away when she feels that her life is threatened by the mere fact of staying in her home. Not only because her brother was violent with her and be very abusive towards her, but also her father was never defending her. She feared that if something was to happen someday, they wouldn't even get her to the hospital. They would let her to die. So at the age of 16, she decides to leave, but for that she had to be financially independent. She had to learn how to ask for help. She had to grow up and to grow out of her preconceived beliefs, even though she didn't completely believe them. But you know, when you never went to the doctor, accepting treatment, accepting dental treatment, even for normal people, it's difficult to go to the dentist, and so imagine for someone that would never go to a doctor. She had to overcome herself in so many ways, and this was so interesting. Now, the second book I want to talk to you about is a winner of the Man Booker Prize in 2019, actually. So that's kind of big, huh? So this book is Celestial Bodies by Jokha Alharthi. This is a Omani author. The book is set in Alharthi, a small village in Oman, and it tells us the story of 3 sisters, Maya, Asma, and Khawla. So Maya marries Abdullah after a breakup, so she's not really in love with Abdullah, but he is very in love with her. So the relationship is one-sided, and they have to grow together and try to learn, try to accept their fates, kind of. This book begins after the colonial era, and it goes until our present time. Change of plan, change of setting, of luminosity. What I thought was really interesting with this book is that we really discover first Oman's history, because that's something I really was not knowledgeable about personally. We discover how the country has evolved and how it has transitioned from a very traditional society, from a very tribal society, to a kind of modern society, more open to the world and more globalized, I'd say. The second thing also is that we see the evolution of the country through the eyes of slaves, because after the colonial era there are still many slaves in Oman. We see the change when slavery is little by little something that becomes backwards and not really accepted anymore. The other thing I thought was really interesting with this book is how the narration is fragmented with the diverse characters telling their stories, but also the use of the mythology of the Arab world, the use of the stories that are transmitted from generation to generation. And all of this kind of gives a sensation of really discovering and knowing the Omani society, I feel. Third book I read during the lockdown and I really, surprisingly really liked is Yes, No, Maybe by Aisha, Saeed and Becky Albertalli, I think. Yes. So this book I didn't think I would like actually, because I read a lot of comments about it on Goodreads, etc., saying that it's again the trope of the Muslim girl who falls in love with the white savior, etc. So I thought it would be something I was not really into, and I still went on and read it, because what I thought would be interesting in this book is that it's a very political book, and I feel like it's something very rare when it comes to YA fiction. Well, obviously, every book is somehow a little bit political, but when I'm talking about political, this book is dealing with the involvement of youth in political elections. The two characters, Maya and Jamie, end up doing political canvassing during their summer, trying to convince people to go to vote for a Democrat candidate. So yeah, obviously this is very political oriented book, a very progressive book. And when it comes to the love story between Maya and Jamie, well, I like their story because, you know, it's, for me it wasn't about white saviorism or anything, but it's my personal opinion. You know, I've read A Very Large Expanse of Sea by Tahir Mafi, and I really didn't like this book because of the relationship with the white boy that was used as a kind of way to rebel for the girl. Whereas in Yes, No, Maybe, so it's completely the opposite. First of all, the parents know about this relationship. Well, at first they don't know, they think it's a friend, but by the end they know, and they tell her what they think about it. You know, as Muslim parents, they tell her that they would not want that for her, but she is free to do as she pleases. So there is no rebelling against your family kind of trope, you know. And at the end of the day, for me, it feels representative of love stories you will see in real life of Muslim people falling in love for non-Muslim people. That's things that happen. So for me, not every love story between a Muslim girl and a white boy in a YA book should be considered as something that falls into the trope of the white savior love story, etc. And in this book, that's not at all how I felt like the relationship was, because both of the characters had their struggles and they helped each other through their summer together, overcoming their struggles. For instance, Jamie has a very hard time being vocal about his opinions, and Maya will help him get there, will help him get into activism, basically. And the other point that I feel like was really important in this book is that it didn't erase the barrier of religion and culture in this relationship. Maya did not completely forget her beliefs and her faith while going into this relationship. She was on the contrary fighting against her feelings because of her beliefs. I still ship the relationship, you know, even though it wasn't a representation of myself, you know, in a book, I still liked it. The book I just recently finished is Lovely War by Julie Berry. So here again, it's a love story that happens during the First World War. it is, well, two love stories actually, because there are four characters. First, there is Jamie and Hazel. Jamie is a wannabe architect, and Hazel is a musician. She plays piano, and they meet up in a ball in Poplar in London, where she plays the piano, and then they end up sharing a dance. And then a few days after that, Jamie has to go to war. So they keep their relationship going, exchanging letters, and they see each other when Jamie has a few days off in Paris. And the second love story is with Colette and Aubrey. Colette is a Belgian orphan girl whom Hazel meets while she volunteers with the YMCA charity in France, and Colette has lost all her family to the war because she lived in the city of Dinant in Belgium, a city that was almost completely erased during a German attack. She falls in love with Aubrey, an African-American musician who came to France with his band with the American army. Oh, and I forgot to show you the book. Here it is. Isn't it lovely? With the Eiffel Tower here. Oh, it's such a beautiful book. What I found really interesting about this book is that it shines light. Not only the love story is very sweet and very emotional because of the war in the background, you know, but also this book has two other qualities. First, there is the narration that is very special because the love story is told to the Greek gods, who kind of tell the story of the four characters. And the second very cool thing in this book is that it shines light on two facets of the war, of the First World War, that we never really hear about. At least I was not knowledgeable enough about these two subjects. The first one is the destruction of Belgium during First World War. Something I've learned in school, but I didn't really comprehend it. And the second thing was the participation of African Americans during First World War. I knew about the participation of Africans during the First World War, but I didn't really know that there was a regiment of African Americans and that there were also African American women in France during the war. So it was really interesting, especially that the book is really well researched, and there is a whole 10 pages of history and a bibliography at the end of the book. So cool. Last book I read during the lockdown and that I binge read in like 2 days or something like that was Persuasion by Jane Austen. Okay, so I'm a Jane Austen fan and I just want to read all her books, which I didn't manage to do yet. So this was a very good occasion to me, and Persuasion was one book by Jane Austen I really wanted to read for some time now. It's the story of Anne, a 27-year-old unmarried girl in the 18th century. That's something big apparently, and she's still very sad about a relationship that was aborted 7 years before. She was engaged with Frederick Wentworth, but the engagement was called off because her friend Lady Russell thought that it was not worthy enough of her family and of her rank, etc. She kind of followed on the advices that were given to her at that time. She was very young, she was like 21 or something like that. So they meet up again 7 years later, and the two of them have to confront what happened between them years before. As usual, Jane Austen knows how to capture feelings, how to express them. Basically, she's a queen of making me ship two characters together. That was all about the 5 top books I read during the lockdown. If you have any Goodreads that you discovered during the lockdown, don't hesitate to share with me. And if you have read any of the books that I presented, or if you want to read them and have any questions, don't hesitate to comment. I will read everything. And see you next time!